3:23, Samuel anoints David. Chapter 16. And the Lord said to Samuel, "How long will you mourn for Saul? How long will you mourn for Saul, saying, I've rejected him from reigning over Israel? Fill your horn with oil, and come, I will send you to Jesse, the Bethlehemite. For I have found for myself a king among his sons." 2. And Samuel said, "How can I go? If Saul hear it, he will kill me." And the Lord said to Samuel, "Take a heifer with you and say, I've come to sacrifice to the Lord." Three. And invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show you what you shall do, and you shall anoint to me him whom I name unto you. For and Samuel did as the Lord commanded him, and came to Bethlehem of Jordan, and the elders of the town went out to meet him, and said, "Is your coming peaceable?" And he said, "Peaceable. I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Sanctify yourselves and come with me to the sacrifice." And he sanctified Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice. 6. And when they were come, he looked at Eliab and said, "Surely the Lord's anointed is like him." 7. But the Lord said to Samuel, "Do not look on his appearance or on the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For I do not see as man sees, for man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart." 8. Then Jesse called Abinadab and made him pass before Samuel, and he said, "Neither has the Lord chosen this one." 9. Then Jesse made Shammah pass by, and he said, "Neither has the Lord chosen this one." 7. And Jesse made 7 of his sons pass before Samuel. 8. And Samuel said to Jesse, "The Lord has not chosen these." 11. And Samuel said to Jesse, "Are these all the sons you have?" And he said to him, "There remains yet the youngest, and behold, he is tending the sheep." And Samuel said to Jesse, "Send and bring him here, for I will not leave until he comes here." 12. And he sent and brought him, and now he was ruddy with beautiful eyes, and very handsome. And the Lord said to Samuel, "Arise, anoint him, for this is he." Then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brothers, and the Spirit of the Lord came upon David from that day forward. Then Samuel rose up, and went to Ramtha to his house. 14. But the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and an evil spirit from before the Lord troubled him. 15. And the Lord's servant said to him, "Behold, your servants are before you." 16. Let them seek out a man who can play well on the harp, and when the evil spirit is upon you, he will play with his hands, and you shall be well. 17. And Saul said to his servants, "Provide me now a man who can play well, and bring him to me." 18. Then one of the young men answered, and said, "Behold, I have seen a son of Jesse the Bethlehemite, who is skillful in playing, and a mighty valiant man, a man of war, and prudent in speech, a handsome man, and the Lord is with him." 19. Wherefore King Saul sent messengers to Jesse and Saul, to Jesse and said, Send me David your son. He will be useful to me. And Jesse took an ass laden with bread, and a skin of wine, and a kid of goats, and sent them by David his son to Saul. 21. And David came to Saul, and stood before him, and he loved him greatly, and he became his armor bearer. 22. And Saul sent to Jesse, saying, Let David attend me, for he has found favor in my sight. 23. And whenever the evil spirit from the Lord was upon Saul, David took a harp and played on it. So Saul was refreshed and was well, and the evil spirit departed from him. 17. Now the Philistines gathered together their armies for battle, and were massed at the border of Judah, and they encamped between the border of Akkah and Ephes-Min. 2. And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together and encamped in the valley of Terebinth, and they set the army in array to fight against the Philistines. 3. And the Philistines stood on the mountain on the one side of Israel, and Israel stood on a mountain on the other side, and the valley was between them. 4. And there went out a mighty man from the camp of the Philistines, named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. 5. And he had a helmet of brass upon his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of his coat of mail was 5,000 shekels of brass. 6. And he had greaves of brass upon his legs, and a cuirass of mail between his shoulders. What's a cuirass? The cuirass is cuirass, a piece of armor consisting of a breastplate and a backplate fastened together. Okay, it's also an artificial ventilator. Okay, no problem. That's a cuirass, okay. And the cuirass of mail between his shoulders. 7. And the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and its spearhead weighed 600 shekels of iron, and his shield bearer went before him. And he stood and cried to the armies of Israel and said to them, Why have you come out to set your battle in array? I am not a Philistine, Am I not a Philistine? And are you not servants of Saul? Choose a man for yourselves, that he may come out against me. 9. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants and serve us. 10. And the Philistines said, I have defied the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man, that we may fight together. 11. And Saul and all Israel heard the words of the Philistine. They were dismayed. And when Saul and all Israel heard the words of the Philistine, they were greatly dismayed and greatly afraid. 12. Now David was the son of an Ephraimite of Benjamin, of Judah, whose name was Jesse. And he had 8 sons. And the man was old and advanced in years in the days of Saul. 13. And the 3 older sons of Jesse went and followed Saul to the battle. And their names were Eliab, the firstborn, and next to him Abinadab, Eliab, the firstborn, next to him Abinadab, and third Shammah, sometimes Shammua. 14. And David was the younger. 15. Now David had returned from Saul and had gone to tend his father's sheep at Bethlehem. 16. And the Philistine drew near morning and evening and presented himself for 40 days. 17. And Jesse said to David his son, Take now for your brothers an ephah of parched wheat and 10 loaves of bread, and run to the camp to your brothers, and carry these 10 cheeses to the commander of their 1,000, and inquire into the welfare of your brothers, and bring news of them to me. 19. Now Saul and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Terebinth, fighting with the Philistines. 20. And David rose up early in the morning and left the sheep with the keeper, and took and went as Jesse had commanded him. And he came in to the camp in the valley which goes up to the battle array. And the army shouted for battle. 21. Then Israel and the Philistines put themselves in battle array, army against army. 22. And David put off his provisions by the side of his baggage and ran into the army ranks and came and saluted his brothers. 23. And while he was talking with them, behold, there came up the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, out of the armies of the Philistines, and spoke the same words, and David heard them. 24. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the mighty man, were afraid and fled from him. 25. And the men of Israel said, Have you seen this man who has come up? Surely to defile Israel he has come up. And it shall be that the man who kills him, the king will enrich him with great riches, and give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel. Free of taxes, I suppose. 26. And David said to the men who stood by him, What shall be done for the man who kills this uncircumcised Philistine, and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? 27. And the people told him the king's promises, saying, So shall it be done to the man who kills him. 27. And when Eliab, his eldest brother, heard him, when he spoke to the men, Eliab's anger was kindled against David, and he said to him, Why have you come down here? And with whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your boldness and the evil in your heart, for you have come down to see the battle. 29. And David said, What have I done now? Behold, I was just talking. 30. And he turned from him to the other side and spoke in the same manner, and the people answered him again as they had done before. 31. And when the words which David spoke were reported to Saul, he sent for him. 32. And David said to Saul, Let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight this Philistine. Wow. I've been there, Lord. 33. And the Lord and Saul said to David, "You are not able to go and fight against this Philistine. You are not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for you are but a boy, and he has been a man of war from his youth." 34. And David said to Saul, "Your servant was tending his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear, and took the lamb from the flock." 35. And I went out after the lion and smote him, and delivered it out of his mouth. And he growled at me, and I caught him by his beard, and I smote him, and I slew him. 36. Your servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he has defied the armies of the living God. 37. David said, "Moreover, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear will deliver me out of the hands of this Philistine." And Saul said to David, "Go, and the Lord be with you." 38. And Saul armed David with his own armor, and put a helmet of brass on his head, and armed him with a coat of mail. 39. And David girded his sword upon his armor, but he was unwilling to go, for he had not tried them out. So David took them off. 40. And he took his staff in his hand, and chose 5 smooth stones out of the gravel, and put them in his shepherd's bag, even into his wallet. And his sling was in his hand, and he drew near the Philistine. 41. And behold, the Philistine came and drew near to David, and his shield bearer was before him. 42. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth, and ruddy, and of a fair countenance. 43. And the Philistine said to David, "Am I a dog that you have come to me with a staff?" And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. 44. And the Philistine said to David, "Come to me, and I will give your flesh to the fowls of the air and to the beasts of the field." Oh, what was that other page? That other page was 325. Oh no, I missed. 324 was Goliath's challenge. 325, David meets Goliath. And now we're on 326, David kills Goliath. 45. Then David said to the Philistine, "You come against me with a sword, and with a spear, and with a shield. But I come against you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied." 46. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I will slay you and take your head from you, and I will give your carcass, and I will give the carcasses of the host of the Philistines this day to the wild beasts of the earth, and to the fowls of the air, and that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. 47. And all this assembly shall know that the Lord saves not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will deliver you into our hands. 48. And behold, when the Philistine came and drew near to meet David, David hastened and ran to the battle line to meet the Philistine. 49. And David put his hand in his bag, and took thence a stone, and slung it, and struck the Philistine in the forehead, and the stone sunk into his forehead, and he fell upon his face to the earth. 50. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone, and smote the Philistine and slew him. But there was no sword in the hand of David. 51. Therefore David ran and stood over the Philistine, and took his sword and drew it out of his sheath, and slew him and cut off his head. And when the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they fled. 52. And the men of Israel and of Judah arose and shouted and pursued the Philistines as far as the entrance of the valley, and as far as the valley of Ekron. And the slain of the Philistines fell by the way of Sharaim, even to Gath and to Ekron. 53. And the children of Israel returned from chasing the Philistines and plundered their camps. 54. And David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to Jerusalem, but he put his armor in his tent. 55. And Saul saw David going forth against, and when Saul saw David going forth against the Philistine, he said to Abner, the commander of his army, "Whose son is this youth?" And Abner said, "As your soul lives, O king, I do not know." 56. And the king said, "Inquire whose son this young man is." 57. And when David returned, after he had slain the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul with the head of the Philistine in his hand. 58. And Saul said to him, "Whose son are you, young man?" And David said to him, "I am the son of your servant, Jesse the Bethlehemite." Chapter 18. When David had finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul too. And Saul took him that day and would not let him return to his father's house. 3. Then Jonathan and David made a covenant, because Jonathan loved David as his own soul. 4. And Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was upon him and gave it to David, and his garments, even to his sword, and his bow, and his girdle. 5. And David went out wherever Saul sent him, and was victorious, so that Saul appointed him over the men of war, and he found favor in the sight of all the people, and also in the sight of Saul's servants. And it came to pass, as they returned, when David came back from the slaughter of the Philistines, the women came out of the cities of Israel singing and dancing to meet King Saul with tambourines and with cymbals, and were rejoicing. 7. And the women sang as they played and laughed, saying, "Saul has slain by thousands, and David by tens of thousands." 8. And Saul was very wroth, and this saying displeased him. And he said, "They have ascribed to David 10,000s, and to me they have ascribed but thousands. And what more can he have but the kingdom?" 3:27. Saul is jealous. 9. And Saul began to envy David from that day forward. 10. And it came to pass after some days that an evil spirit from the Lord came upon Saul, and he prophesied in the midst of his house, and David was playing music in his presence, as at other times, and there was a javelin in Saul's hand. 11. And Saul threw the javelin, for he said, "I will pin David to the wall." But David evaded it twice. 12. And Saul was afraid of David, because the Lord was with him, and had departed from Saul. 13. Therefore Saul removed him from his presence, and made him a commander over 1,000, and he went out to war, and came in before the people. 14. And David was a man of understanding in all his ways, and the Lord was with him. 15. And when Saul saw that he was exceedingly wise, he was afraid of him. 16. But all Israel and Judah loved David, because he went out to war, and came in before them. 17. And Saul said to David, "Behold, my elder daughter Nadab. It's supposed to be Michal, isn't it? Nadab. I will give it to you to wife, but you must become a commander-in-chief for me and fight the Lord's battles." For Saul said, "Let not my hand be against him, but let the hand of the Philistines be against him." 18. And David said to Saul, "Who am I, and what have I done, or what is my life or my father's family in Israel, that I should be a father-in-law to the king?" 19. But it came to pass at that time that Nadab, Saul's daughter, should be given to David. But it came to pass at the time when Nadab, Saul's daughter, should be given to David, she was given to Azriel, the Maholathite, to wife. 30. And Malchel, Saul's daughter, loved David, and they told Saul, and the thing pleased him. 21. And Saul said, "I will give it to him, that she may be a hindrance to him, and that the hand of the Philistines may be against him." Wherefore Saul said to David, "You shall this day be my son-in-law in doing one of two things." 22. And Saul commanded his servants to speak to David, the son of Jesse, saying, "Behold, the king has delight in you, and all his servants love you. Now therefore be the king's son-in-law." 23. And Saul's servants spoke these words to David, and David said, "It seems to you a light thing to be a king's son-in-law, seeing I am a poor man and despised." 24. And the servants of Saul told him, saying, "These are the words which David spoke." 25. And Saul said, Thus you shall say to David, the king does not desire any dowry, but 200 foreskins of the Philistines to be avenged of his enemies. But King Saul thought to make David fall by the hand of the Philistines. 26. And when the servants of Saul told David these words, it pleased David well to be the king's son-in-law, but the time had not come. 27. Wherefore David arose and went out, he and his men, and slew 200 men of the Philistines, and bought their foreskins, and gave them to the king, that he might be the king's son-in-law. And Saul gave him Malchel his daughter to wife. 28. And Saul saw and knew that the Lord was with David, and that Malchel Saul's daughter loved David exceedingly. 29. And Saul was still more afraid of David, and Saul became David's enemy thenceforth. 30. Then the princes of the Philistines went forth raiding, and it came to pass at that time they went forth raiding, David was more successful than all the servants of Saul, so that his name was highly honored.